39,255 men took their life in the year of 2022 in the United States of America. That number is up 2.3% from 2021. I'm hoping with the After Dark series that we're doing as part of ATG to help illustrate that two men can have a really deep, intimate conversation, which hopefully sparks other men to have those conversations. Because I believe now as men, more than ever, we shouldn't be looking down on each other unless it's to give a hand to help your fellow brother up. So that being said, welcome to our After Dark segment. I'm my good friend, Jason Theobald. He owns Scooby Health, joining us today. New Ethics Formulations, Advanced Vitality. They are sponsors of our podcast, but Jason actually got his start on the bodybuilding boards long ago. And we'll get into that a little bit. We're going to talk today. He's going to interview me going over my book. Some of the questions he had, so you guys can kind of get to know me, get to know the book, get to know my story. But first, I got to ask you something. Why were the Bengals such trash this year?
Man, this becomes a very complicated answer. I mean, you can first say that, Burrow got hurt, but then why did Burrow get hurt? They want to blame it on the offensive line, but Mixon started to run well once Burrow went out. So here's the real issue, in my opinion. Burrow likes to be out of the shotgun all the time. He doesn't like to be under center. So our runs start 5-6 yards in the backfield. Right. Burrow, everyone knows we're about throwing all the time. So they take us out, and our offensive line is more built to run. So Burrow has to get used to being back under center like Browning did, and then we'll crush everyone. I mean, we have the amazing tools. Unfortunately, we might lose some receivers. But in my opinion, he's got to learn to get under center, and that will fix a lot of things. And then, of course, we lost some players on defense because you just can't pay everyone with that offensive machine we have.
All right, what do you think about my Cowboys? Are they going to let me down again on Sunday versus the Packers?
I think they'll get by the Packers.
Oh, you think so? All right, bold man. What's your Super Bowl prediction?
Man, that's a good question.
We got to know, audience. We're going to make sure if he's wrong, you guys can blast him.
I think 49ers are going to be in there.
Oh, you're going with them?
I think 49ers. Okay. Ooh. On the other sides, I can't remember how the teams pair. I still think the Chiefs are going to come through and have a good, but are they in the same division on that side?
No, they've got the Ravens they've got to get through.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody's getting through the Ravens.
They might
right
not.
now.
I mean, they're the juggernaut out of our division. Did you know everyone had a winning record in our division?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, the Tampa Bay got in with 9-8, and we were 9-8 and in last place in the FC North. I could see Ravens being in the Super Bowl as well, though.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the 49ers probably the Chiefs or Ravens or something.
So you're going like that. So we're going to go 49ers, Chiefs?
Or Ravens.
Or you can't fucking do or.
We'll go Chiefs.
All right, Chiefs. So we got 49ers, Chiefs. And by the way, I want to introduce everyone to our producer, Logan. He is joining us, producing all this. So, Logan, who's your Super Bowl prediction? Let's get this out.
Like you guys were saying, the Ravens would be tough to beat. The 49ers are pretty good too. But honestly, the Ravens. I don't know how you could go against them. I mean, they're just
They do seem like,
they're unstoppable. I mean, that offense when it gets going is just so hard to beat. If you get down by 7 to them.
So I'll tell you who I'm rooting for, though. I'm rooting for the Browns and the Bills.
Oh, yeah, the Browns.
The Browns, I would love to see Flacco. He's making that comeback, right?
That's true.
At 39, he's been on his couch. That's respectable. And then Buffalo is Aria's team. And so now that my team's out, I'll give her the love. And then the Browns just, I don't think they've ever won a Super Bowl, neither of the Bills and neither of the Bengals.
Yeah.
So I gotta kind of give some love to those clubs.
I see where you're going with.
Did
So
you see how many old players are going back to their Stafford's going back to Detroit, Flacco's going back to Baltimore?
yeah, it's really weird.
No, Flacco went to the Browns.
Yeah, but no, he's playing.
Going back to Baltimore.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Got
Could
it.
you imagine if Stafford never won a playoff game in Detroit and comes back with the Rams and beats
Right.
them at home?
That would be wild. I'm going to go with my Cowboys. I got to hope that this is the year that the curse is broken. I like to think we are the Boston Red Sox of professional football. We are the story franchise that hasn't done shit in a very long time. So I just have to go all in on my boys. But I have a feeling that they are going to break my heart. If they break it, it's going to be early, or I think we go all the way. It's either you get out in the first round or we get all the way through. And I think it's going to be nothing but that from them. I think so. So, all right. With that being said, so you got one of my advanced copies of my book. You're one of the first people I let read it.
Yep.
You even read it before it kind of went to proofread to clean up grammar and things
Yep.
like that. And I share that with you because I wanted you to see the idea of it. Because, you know, when David Goggins' book came out, Can't Hurt Me, a lot of people were like, hey, your bodybuilding and your bone disease, that's kind of, you know, not saying you did Goggins shit, but you did do something like that was mentally demanding of a person to really stare down and repeat over and over and over. So I finally, you know, decided to do it, as you know, from where we were on a podcast before. We interviewed Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah.
And that picked that asshole's brain one too many times. So he's not my asshole, he's a pal. But asshole in a good way.
Yeah.
And he's the one who sat down and like met with me every month through Zoom to make sure it happened. And I ended up turning out 102,000 words. I remember that. And then he was like, you have to get down to 65,000. And I was like, you're insane. But I did. It was a lesson in what really mattered most to me to remember. And that's what the book was really about. So with that being said, I want to kind of get your initial thoughts when you read it, what you thought about it, and then whatever questions you had and stuff like that, I think would be helpful for people to know. You know, you said it best. I told someone that I've heard it said two ways. My wife says it's a self-help book that can't help but be or a autobiography that can't help but be a self-help book or something like that, but can't help but rather be a self-help book. She's got a beautiful saying to it. And then you said it was a raw therapy session. And I tell people, I'm like, literally, that's what I felt like it was. It's one of those stories where I wanted to illustrate a life of what like trauma looked like up to a certain point and how modern medicine kind of didn't fail me, but wasn't the right path, and more medicines wasn't the answer. And I ended up going down the path of psychedelics, and there was a lot of other stuff in there, but I wanted to kind of get that. Yeah, get the book.
You know, so when I first read it, you know, we've been friends since 2010, 9.
Yeah, we met at Junior Nationals.
Somewhat,
up
10,
there
9. It might have been
bodybuilding.
9. In any event, 10. In any event, friends a long time. And, you know, it's interesting. I've heard you talk about upbringing and things like that. But when you finally can sit and read someone's, like I said, to me, it was raw thoughts of how this all went down. And it just felt like it was like, man, this is like a therapy session for him. I can tell how like cathartic this is. Mm-hmm. And so that rawness and that realness is what I think the readers are going to respond to. That's my opinion. And so I knew after I read it, you had something very powerful there.
What stood out to you in that book that was the first moment you went like, oh, he's really going to go like fucking there with it and like really pull back there? What part stood out to you for that?
Number one, how detailed and how much the memory is burnt into your mind of falling. You know,
Yeah.
I could smell it. I could feel it. I could feel like the pain, you know? And then not much longer after that chapter, talking about your grandpa, like your first bully.
Yeah.
Like I kind of knew where it was going, but like, you know, if I was someone new reading that, I wouldn't have at all thought that your first bully was going to be a family member. You know?
You know, it was interesting. And I went through a lot of counseling, and that's something like I've learned because I get asked a lot of advice by men about counseling because a lot of men won't go talk to counselors. Yeah. And I know what that's like because you're like, oh, this person isn't going to fucking listen to me or this or that. Counseling is a lot like dating. You have to go around and be willing to find one that's really going to call you on your bullshit. Yeah, I finally had one who would sit down with me and be like, that is stupid as shit. Why? You know, or like pull stuff up.
That's a hard one to find,
exactly, you know? And
I think technically they're taught to only prod at you with questions,
to, no.
and they're not supposed to. They're, you know what I mean?
But it's no different than like us as trainers. We're not supposed to tell you how to do your macronutrients specifically, but you and I both know that's how you really get the results. Yeah. That's why I respected the dude. And he was the first person that I ever sat in counseling. And so this is an interesting thing I want to talk about. When I would go to counseling, dude, people, like, I could feel their energy. You know how that is? Like, in a room, you're starting to be like, all right, tell all your sins to whatever's there. Yeah. and you could feel them like shift. And I remember sometimes like counselors would start like leaning back, like I would low key like see feet shift, like they're trying to push back for me.
Right.
And he was the first person. He's this older man. And I said, look, man, in order for this work, I gotta know what the hell's been wrong with you. So he's like, former alcohol, or he said retired alcoholic, 25 years of burning my life to ash, marriage, and terrible kid relationships to show for it. Decided to get my act together. Now I live a second act. And I was like, I appreciate that dirt. And after that, I remember I went right in for the kill and told him about how they broke my leg on me. And that dude didn't even flinch. I was like, all right, I can go. And so I talk to people about counseling. Like, you have to find someone that you can like really sit comfortably with and you feel that that's comfortable with in order to have those conversations. But he was the one who brought that up with me about Peter, my grandfather, because he was like, well, how are you treated? So like my uncle and him would like grab my arm and like try to twist it up behind my back and weird shit. They just didn't believe my mom and dad when they said I was fragile. You know, it was one of those things. So I remember like reflecting on it later in life, and it was one of those situations I did not cry when that man died. And I remember being like 12 years old and he's like crying, begging to just live at the end of his life. And I was just sitting there as a 12-year-old like, fuck it, you get what you get. Because I was like just being bitter about what he did. But then I get older and I feel like an asshole because I get into history and I'm reading about how like a guy from World War II on that front of the Japanese front dealt with shit. I'm like, oh man, I feel like such an asshole. I thought that.
Well, I think sometimes when we're young, we don't get that perspective from what might made them the way they are. Your brain doesn't work that way when you're a child. As you get older, you can look back and say, that person was dealing with a lot. It doesn't make it right, but at the same time, you know, you can look back and see what they were dealing with too. And we don't notice those things, you know.
That's really well said.
Young.
And that's one of those things where, you know, I want to, let's talk about this one, because you and I have chatted about this. So you have not done psychedelics for the mental health side like I have. You've done it more just like, hey, had a good time. We've talked a little bit about that. But what we're seeing today, I think a lot of younger kids trying this. And I can say I don't think I would have appreciated what they did for my mental health without the years, the stripes, and the scars on my mind, soul, and heart. I think I had to have those in order for those drugs to really work, for me to sort it out, because in my mind it was trauma, but then I sit back in it, I'm like, well, hell, Peter was going through trauma. Like reliving his friends being blown up and you know what I mean? And then you saw all this stuff. So with that being said, what is your thoughts on how people and men today, I guess, interpret their trauma? And is psychedelic something that you kind of believe in and kind of see as like a big thing on the horizon?
Yeah. You know, number one, you know, I'll tackle the psychedelics. I definitely think there's going to be more and more studies coming out and supporting it. 100%. There's no doubt about it. As I've told you before, for me, it's just been something that I've kind of just done with friends. And, you know, if people aren't, you know, used to it or hearing about it and they're listening to this podcast, I mean, you're not tripping. Everything's just a little more enhanced. And brain connections are a little better and connections with people are a little better. Everything is enhanced. So for me, it's always just been something that I've done just to enjoy the moment a little bit more, just try something different, mellow out friends. But I can see where if you have some like guided help or you're really ready to kind of go to that place, they'd be a great gateway. And I think they're going to help a lot of people. For me, so far, it's just been kind of like, you know, it's a fun thing. I see who I connect with. I see that I don't need to be on my phone as much. So that's a thing I've learned. But yeah, 100%. It's only going to be more and more something that maybe psychologists and things start using. You know?
I'm hopeful for the future with that. And that's the one thing I talked about in my book was I felt like it was Pandora's box and we all had to be ready for what we were going to shake up and deal with.
Question whether you were going to go there, or did you always know you were?
What do you mean in terms
of even putting it in the book?
I was 100% going to put it in the book. I didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
It was one of those deals where I was just going to be, I wanted a very honest journey, because here's the deal I figured out. Okay. We live in a world of social media, and you know, I've taken a break for a little bit. I can't operate in that world of fake ass shit. Like I just can't. And I think it's because I had such a very unique life. I had such unique experiences at a young age that I kind of got away from my identity identity to a degree. And I felt like if I was going to do this book, I would do it like as if you were to sit next to a bar with me and you were to ask me about my life over drinks. This is the conversation you'd get.
You're gonna get.
And that's how I wanted to approach it, because I started thinking when I first did psychedelics, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm actually really a deeply spiritual person. Like, I believe in something on the other side. I think organized religion is kind of more of criminal, and we should tax them to help our U.S. government help with stuff. But that's a whole different conversation for another day. But I do believe in something on the other side. And I remember being raised stout Catholic, being raised red. I'm a Tennessee boy through and through. You know, I'm sitting here raised one way. And I remember I felt like I was letting God down when I had to go do this, because I'm like, man, I literally have to figure out who, one, can get me Schedule 1 drugs to try.
Right.
And then 2, hopefully it's not so screwed up on the dose that I lose my mind and then I'm in jail and I'm figuring out how to beat a naked streaking in the street charge and some other weird shit that I did that I didn't want to. So I went through a lot of like reconciliation of what I would dare to say, like feeling of sin. Like I had to I was like doing something bad by trying it. But I can honestly say I felt like my argument back when I wrote this book, if a Christian or any person who's a believer of God would ask me, I'd be like, I'm sorry, but I literally got on my knees and was so broken that there was nothing talking back to me. It was dead silence. And I knew if I was going to keep going down that road, sooner or later, something was going to happen. And it wouldn't be necessarily by my own direct hand, I started realizing. It would have been my lack of ability to give a shit about what was going to come next, is what I think would have happened. And I felt like at that point, when it really came down to what was it not worth trying? And I think that was the argument I wanted to present to people. 100%. It's completely normal to feel like you're a quitter and having to do these hard drugs because of what we were raised doing. But damn, man, if people who are dying of cancer can have these life impacts and all say it was the top moment and experience in their life, who the fuck am I to say now? I mean, in my book, I talk about it. My mom got me growth hormone when I was 12 years old because she was afraid I'd be short. So I've always been raised on the outlaw side of things,
100%.
per se. So it was just kind of bored into me. And that's when I said, well, shit, man, like, why not? And I was pretty straight edge, non-drug user until my late 20s. Then I got into cocaine a little bit because I like to be awake at the bars when I bounced for side money. But I didn't smoke pot till I was 32. And that's, most people were shocked by that.
Yeah, I mean, that was, my first one I used.
I went right for cocaine. Dude, I did ecstasy when I was 19. And I went to a gay bar with my workout partner, Chuck, who was gay. He's a big 6 foot, 250 pound dude. I was like, all right, Chuck, I'm going to be rolling my balls off. What happens if some dude hits on me? He goes, you just tell him you're my boyfriend. And I was like, fuck yeah, all right. So I'm in this bathroom and I'm like, peeing. I'm like, that's my boyfriend. Just like having the best time, sweating my ass off, drinking orange juice. Jesus. So I was always like the guy who did the otter stuff. Like, my mom bought me for my first steroid cycle. It was Deca and D-ball. So I was
in D-ball and no testosterone.
And no testosterone. Man, that was the Flex Wheeler winning cycle back in the day. But that's the stuff I wanted people to hear about in the book, because that was a big thing to me, as we talk about the drug use, because there is stuff in there. Believe it or not, the editor for Scribe Media, which went to shit and took a lot of my money, but that's a different story. Did not want me to put a lot of the stuff about my steroid use in the book because they thought it would be open door policy to other people. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to lie about what I took, because I think that's part of the problem today. You got, and that from Coach Nat, bodybuilders, you got guys hearing this one thing. And I'm like, well, somewhere is the in-between.
Well, I mean, listen, the muscle is what allowed you to lift and walk and protect your bones. So using steroids helped you build that shield. So to leave it out of your book, to me, would be false advertising. Yeah, it'd be telling a lie. Right. And I couldn't live with myself, dude. Like, and that was so it's thing. Like, sales be damned. This is my story. If you like it, great. Tell the other person. If you don't, that's me. Yeah. I 100%. That's exactly how I did it. It was one of those where I knew when I wrote the book that I was going to get shit either way. I was going to get either way, because it was either
too dark, or it was because it's dark. I mean,
dark.
it's a dark book.
Yep.
But I feel like that's a lot of people's journeys. I've not met too many fucking men in my life now at 43 that haven't walked a little bit with the Grim Reaper at a point or two and kind of really bore down on it. So I'm glad you saw that honesty and that transparency.
100%. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
I don't think we've ever talked about this.
Oh.
So there's a chapter in the book where you stand up to a bully at school.
Yeah.
I mean, here, you know, you had been stuck in a bed for the last really 4 or 5 years prior.
Yeah.
You've been maybe at school for a year, maybe even less. You've been told that you were fragile. What in the hell made you think going and throwing a punch at a kid whose bones don't break was a good idea? And how did you overcome that? Were you just so pissed off you didn't care if your hand shattered? Like, I think I'm such a logical thinker. I think I'd have been like, man, I really want to hit this fucker, but my fist might break. And you just didn't care?
The only thing I could relate to that, dude, is because my parents let me get involved in so many activities as a kid.
And you talk about that earlier in the book.
I never really got comprehended that I was fragile.
Even when you were laying in bed and had all these...
It didn't really cross my mind I was that fragile.
Okay.
Like, and this is a weird thing. It didn't really click with me until I trained with John Meadows one day in Columbus. And he goes, you know, it's really interesting. The guy with the brittle bone disease throws around as much weight as you do. I'd be afraid I'd break a bone every time. And then I was like, oh yeah, I'd kind of like put that in my head for like 20 years, hadn't I? And I just think it was just a great like disassociation mechanism I had to a degree where I would just be like, nope, that isn't me. This is me. And it had been so unrelenting to me in the sense that I'm just a person, dude. If you talk enough shit to me, eventually I'm going to fucking say something or do something.
Yes.
And
as being your friend for a very long time, I know this fact about you.
And it was one of those, it didn't cross my mind. I literally was just like the moment he said cripple, and then I saw him walk with a limp to the board. I was like, fuck.
Oh, he had a limp himself?
No, he put a limp on. And that's what flipped me the fuck out. That's what made me see red. And so that's why I went up and grabbed him and just started bam, 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 bam. And I felt bad because Mr. B was a great teacher and all.
Yeah.
But it was the first moment that I wrote about this in the book that I think I can look back on as a man, where I can look at it and say, like, I really inflicted pain upon another man at that point in my life. Because he was very caught off guard that I had done that. Mm-hmm. And he was caught off guard from the sense of like, oh shit, I really crossed. Like, you could tell in his eyes.
He thought it was playful and fun.
Just being a fucking dickhead.
And yeah.
And it rubbed me so wrong.
Yeah.
But what most people don't know, and you wouldn't know until you read the book. So I broke my leg before my 3rd grade year. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm pretty much in and out of, I'm not in school. No. Okay. I end up going back like little spurts, weeks here, weeks there overall. If you actually hear me talk, I didn't really get a lot of schooling, so my phonics are off because of it, things like that. And then when I went to school for 1 week with my bone stretcher device, blood and pus pouring out all over the place caught a lot of kids' attention, so I didn't want to go. So literally, except for 6th grade year where I managed to stay in school for 1 whole year, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 7th, and 8th was pretty much in and out.
Right. That's
so I wasn't around kids. I was around adults. I was literally listening to metal all the time, writing. And my school was on a Monday and a Thursday for 90 minutes each time. And that was it. And they didn't give me really any homework because they were like, oh, look, little poor sad Jeffrey here in this body cast wheelchair. So, dude, when I went to school, like, it was hard for me my freshman year. Like, all the homework, all that shit, to go from nothing to everything.
And plus, you're still in pain.
Yeah, and I'm still in pain, like sitting on hard chairs. I weighed 95 pounds my freshman year. I was skin and bones. Like, it was hard for me. High school was a hard year. Like, but that helped build my confidence more than anything, because it made me want to assert myself to be like, no, fuck this. I belong here. I'm not having some dude bully me out. I'm not having other people treat me differently. I want people to, all I ever wanted to do, man, was just to blend in and be seen as a ghost.
That makes sense.
That's all I wanted. And that was hard for me to achieve in high school.
I bet that. Did it?
I'm sorry, you go. You're good.
Did it get better?
After I hit that kid, done. Nobody said another word to me ever my next few years of high school. Not one word was ever spoken to me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we know how to deal with bullies. Now, in this day and age, I don't think you're allowed to tell your kids that, but
I'd be honest with you. So Keegan, my youngest, has my bone disease.
Yep.
And Keegan got in trouble last year because some kid grabbed him in the locker room, or not locker room, bathroom. Mm-hmm. And I told Keegan what to do. I said, you thunderclap their ears and then hit him in the throat. And that's what Keegan did. And Keegan didn't get any trouble because the kid grabbed him first, no witness. Yeah. They still punish like they should. He defended himself. And I believe that to anybody. I think that's part of the problem in today's world, that people mouth off in the ways they shouldn't. And then one day someone's knocking on their door like, hey, motherfucker, I took that personal. Yeah. And you never know. And that's why, dude, like, if I fuck with someone, I want to make sure that they know that we're on the same bridge and I am the one burning it. Mm-hmm. Like, my mom taught me that shit. She was like, people are going to look at you differently, treat you differently. You need to go about your life accepting this. Therefore, you have to look at people for what they really are. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about this before, The Laws of Human Nature, Robert Greene, all these great books and different stuff. But I think in today's world, smacking someone back sometimes is a good thing.
It's just needed.
Yeah, and I do. And it was one of those examples that, you know, I was 8 years old when Peter did what he did to me in my book and kind of took my freedoms away. And I was going to be fucking damned if at 15, some guy was going to take the freedom of how I actually looked at myself every day. Because I think that's the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. When you're dealing with someone who's bullying you, how is it affecting how you look at yourself every day? Yeah. Like, if it's to the point it's not affecting you, then it's probably not a bully. But if it's really making you where you're just like, speak your fucking mind. Get off. It's better to let people, what is it that I said the other day? Silence among enemies is better than gossip between friends, is what I said. And I firmly believe that as I've gotten 43. I'd just rather be silent with someone if we don't like each other.
Yep.
No reason to go further.
No reason to small talk it.
Yep. But my book highlights something that's not good in America nowadays. Yeah. So kids, buy it, hit your bully back.
Yep. Yep.
Logan's like, gotta edit that out.
We're done.
Yeah, we're done. Fuck your high school bully prevention program. What is up, everyone? All our followers, all our fans, everyone who loves me so much, the beautiful daddy, myself, Jeff Black. As you all know, I am New Ethics Formulations' favorite sponsored athlete, discount code Relentless10. But today we have gourmet greens. Guys, this is 20 plus servings of fruit and veggies. I'm telling you, as a bodybuilder for 28 plus years, I love my fruit and veggies, but getting them all the time is kind of hard. This will help detoxify your body. It's got fiber in there. It's going to help with your gut health. It's even got other prebiotics to really help get your gut health fed and help you feel good. But guess what? You want to make sure you take care of this stuff because it helps with your immune system. The more detoxified you are, the better you're going to run. So check them out. They're a supporter of me. They sponsor just a simple old legally disabled average bodybuilder guy named Jeff Black. But guys, Relentless 10, New Ethics Formulations, give them a shout out. All I ask you to do is just try one product. Tell me they're not the best. And I promise I won't argue, but I really will with you on the internet.
So my name's Jason Theobald. Owner of Scooby Health, New Ethics and Advanced Vitality. You can find me at Instagram. Jason Theobald _Scooby Health is the handle. Where else can you find me? Am I anywhere else? that's next month. I think that's the main place to find me. And then, of course, ScoobyHealth.com. You can fill out any forms you need there, and that will get to me as well. So Instagram, email is jason@ScoobyPrep.com.
Yo, what's the other endeavor that you have that helps people out that you work with?
Well, we got Advanced Vitality, HRT. And so that is www.advancedvitalityhrt.com. And we help men and women with hormone needs. And we'll keep you healthy and optimized. And we've got trained clinicians that you can meet with, really from anywhere in the country. We're a telehealth company. Right. So something I want to talk about now is, so it's kind of a good segue. You knock out this bully and you get suspended from school, and you end up at a grocery store or somewhere and you see, I think it's Flex Magazine. Yeah. And that really sets your whole course of direction, really. And it introduces you to something that's going to allow you to walk when you weren't supposed to. And it all happened kind of, if you hadn't stood up to that bully, you wouldn't have been in that place with your mom because you would have been in school. And I don't know, you might have seen Flex Magazine another time, but that's a pretty big swing. You literally could have backed down from this guy and stayed in school, and you didn't. And here you end up with this thing that ends up, in my mind, at least giving you an ability, at least based on what doctor said, to walk, live a life, be a fucking bodybuilder. How cool is that? Just talk about that whole thing and that swing. Like it's kind of amazing when you look back in life, like this one decision and this one pivotal moment leads to something else. Yeah. And now you've ran with it.
It was one of those where I look back on it and I realized that was a moment of like fate in life. I think in life, you're always going down this path of fate. And then the people who generally have bad lives continually fight that fate. It's kind of, and that used to be me a little bit. I would fight things, then not get the reward.
And by fight things, I think we mean poor decisions.
Poor decisions, correct. You wouldn't do the things you know you should do. And like, I'm just going to try this. And then boom, it blows up in your face. So for me, I don't think if I hit that bully, that would have popped off the way it did in my life. I would have never found that magazine. But two, I had to have my mom. She was a key component. And I want everybody to know that. Like, if it wasn't for my mom, I would never be able to pursue what I did at a high level. Like, what I mean by that is, by that woman, when I turned 16, she got me my membership to Powerhouse Gym, which really opened my eyes to it. The guys who were there, Wade Wilburn, Tim Blackburn, Bino Wallace. Actually, Bino Wallace is big with the state of Tennessee for bodybuilding to this day, big promoter. So I've stayed in touch with them. But those guys were really influential on me. But it was really my mom, Donna, who took me to the gym 4 times a week.
Got your GH for you.
She got that GH for me.
Paid for your first steroid.
Paid for my first steroid.
She's like, we're going to make this motherfucker a muscular.
But it was the whole thing of, because she had already got me working out with a personal trainer in the physical therapy department. And her whole idea was, she was like, look, in the off chance that you really are in a wheelchair more than you would like, or crutches more than you need to know how to take care of yourself. And she was a big teacher on those lessons. I remember one time when I was in a full body cast, I had to go to the bathroom and she would not respond to me. So I had to climb my way out of a hospital bed in a full body cast. So it went up here all the way down my right foot. And I remember in my life, I've had 4 full body cast. It is the equivalent of feeling like you're buried alive. And I tell people that. I'm like, I know what it feels like to be buried alive. Like, that's literally what it feels like. And I had to crawl myself across this floor to the toilet to raise myself up on it to take a shit. And then I come back and I pull myself back up a hospital bed because there's this pull thing, and I figured it out. It took me a little bit. My mom looks over and she goes, now you know what you need to do to be able to take care of yourself and what that looks like. So she was very much a teacher of hard lessons to me.
That's good, because many moms are smothers and want to do everything for their child. And I bet that was very hard for her to do.
I agree 100%. And when you hear that, people are like, oh, your mom's like a fucking bitch doing that. I'm like, no. She was merely trying to show me, like, if I didn't really follow along with what she was trying to preach to me, which was the need to take care of myself, this could be a potentially long life, is what I took for her. Another thing she did for me that was very crucial was she did not let me have pain pills when I left the hospital. And today's day and age, I thank her 100% for that. I know some of those lessons were very brutal, but I thank her for that. So Donna was the big reason why the bodybuilding took off. In my mom's mind, she was like, all right, Jeffrey's going to the gym and working out. She did not know Jeffrey's going to the gym and loading up all this weight and just keeps piling it over and over and over and over. And she didn't know that. I think if she had really put 1 and 1 to 2, it might have been different. But I also want to say this.
Didn't she kind of buffer you though? She said, don't go too heavy, or did
she didn't really no. Once I kind of raised myself emotionally and mentally after about 12. My little sister was on the horizon. She had stuff going on with Jim, my father. The marriage wasn't good. There was just a lot in there that I took a lot of burdens on as a man later.
And we might talk about that here in a minute.
Yeah, but it was more me kind of on my own. And so I was just kind of doing what I wanted to do. Once I got that gym membership, and I had my car when I turned 16, she gave me her old car. I had to drive to Catholic school. It was 22 miles from where I lived in Knoxville, Tennessee. I had to go drive downtown. So I was driving on the interstate like literally the next day after I got 16, It's a way different world we live in now. So she was very hands off with me. She knew I was either playing Dungeons and Dragons with my friends, I was playing guitar in a band, or I was at the gym. She knew I was at one of these three places. I was a straight edge kid. I was really big on trying it. I was competitive in baseball. I was an asshole competitor to play with. I used to talk shit all the time when you were I was a catcher. If you batted with me, I'd be like, "What's up, shorty?" I talk shit. I was short. But, you know, and it was like a meeting of fate, man, I guess. And I owe it all to her because she didn't have the internet to see what it was. And she, if anything, was encouraging. And I think she let me figure out, she left light, the way I would say it, she let life punish me enough. Do you know what I mean? And that's how that's how she chose to raise me.
Yeah. You know, I was having a conversation the other day with Ari about, you know, just the dynamics of mothers and fathers. Right. And, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm having to be like, you know, to teach life. I mean, that's what you do as a father, but these life lessons that I have to teach, I feel like I'm almost being like an asshole. You know what I mean? 100%. And so I think at times you need that buffer usually of a father who sometimes tells the mother, hey, you gotta give him a little, at least that's what happened in my household. My mom wanted to clamp down on my dad, like, you gotta let him go. You gotta let him do this thing. You gotta let him until he shows us that he can't, or he's gonna be bad. And so the fact that I know your dad wasn't around as much and that she took that role on, it's big and it's forethinking. And I think it has definitely landed you where you're at. And you were like, man, I got to learn to take care of myself. I got to be an able-bodied person. This gym is looking pretty good to me. You know? Yeah,
man. Like it was one of those, my whole goal, once I saw it was 1997, you would remember this. It was Muscle Fitness, Lee Priest leaning over across a bar. Yeah. And I remember it was his abs were like that. It was the first time I ever saw a photo that I was like, I think I could do that. I really think if I work hard enough and I could just really do it, I think I could show up. And this is the thing about bodybuilding today. People come to me as a coach. I know you get this. All right, I want to compete 6 months. I'm like, the fuck? It took me 10 years before I ever felt confident enough to do it. You know, and here's the other thing that I loved about bodybuilding. It was able to bring out the inner competitor in me that I had been buried. So I told this to my wife the other night. I've gotten the unfortunate reality of not being able to pursue two dreams in my life to the fullest ability because of something I couldn't control, which is why I tend to have hard conversations, which is why people, when they talk to me about things that hold them back, i.e. race, sexuality, or things like that, I'm always like, usually we're out the air and out the other. I'm like, sorry, it's a sad life, but we all have that. But in my case, with my bone disease, I couldn't play baseball professionally. And then I can never go pro because my left leg's smaller than my right leg. Even though I can get shred out of my mind and, you know, make people who have no excuses look fat next to me, I was always gonna be hard. So I've had to live with that. And you know what though? The fact that I got to live so fucking free made it all worth it to me.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how I look at it. I found something else to focus on, and it shows to accept the rest.
Your attitude, the way you charge through life. I mean, you know, there'd be times you and I'd be hanging out, and I don't think he was like, you know, sometimes you say, oh, well, technically I have a disability, or you do. Yeah. I'm like, I just don't.
You don't see it.
I don't think of it, you know? And so I think that's a testament to how you were raised, but also you saying, stand up to the bully. To me, it was a big pivotal piece in the book. I feel like. No, and so, and then it led to the weight training, and the weight training helped you stay healthy and keep your bones protected. And it was just a piece that I wanted to tie in together. Yeah, but one thing you mentioned was, you know, there was stress on the marriage and things like that. And, you know, I think in the book you kind of tipped the hat that, you know, this was a stress to your parents.
Yes.
And it drove a wedge. And it ended up being that, you know, your dad was in another state and their marriage is falling apart. What kind of guilt did you carry into like adulthood with that? Or did you have it as a kid? Did you feel it? Or was that not something that you could compute till you got a little older?
I always had that guilt because I saw how alone my mom was. And I saw my mom stay home. Yeah. She didn't go out and fuck nobody. She didn't go out and drink. She didn't do anything. She sat at home and read her books and lived a very sad life. If my dad had just pulled her aside and been like, hey, this is done. I'm not coming back home. I would have respected that man a lot more before he passed away. I look at Donna as a sad sad thing, my mom. And I call her that so way people know, like, it's one of those situations where I want you to know she actually is a person. She was my mom, but she actually is a person. And I look at that and I feel like I robbed the person, Donna. I don't feel like I robbed my mom. Does that make sense?
It does.
And I had to separate that out. I feel like I do not rob. I think my mom got a very enriched life because of me, in the sense, like, I think I made her stronger just as much as she made me stronger. I think I made her have to really question things in life that were uncomfortable, that, you know, she was very religious. And then I watched her kind of be not so religious because her prayers weren't answered. Things were not going her way. And I think if anything, she got her dream. She wanted to be a mom. She was very honest about that. She walked away from a very successful career up in Boston when she met my dad. So she knew what she was getting. I think as a person for Donna, I let her down, the person Donna. And I took away from Donna. I do not think I took away from my mom.
That makes sense. So with that, are those the types of things that you think you carried into adulthood that maybe made you, I don't know, make decisions that weren't good for you because you were punishing you?
Dude, I was horrible. I was one of those people in relationships. If I associated it, this was the poison I talked about in my book, which led me into the mental health issues and the psychedelics.
Correct.
One, no one ever talked about mental health. So 2, I had nightmares all the time. And then 3, I associated pain with progress. So unless a partner was in pain with me, we weren't growing together. And I did dumb shit. And it was immature. Like, I'm 19. I got kicked out of university for fighting. Got in a fight with a guy. I know it's the story of my life. He talked some shit. I hit him. But anyway, yeah. Except he was, yep. I got in trouble. So anyway, I got thrown up. So I go to Portland. The girl's 31. My dad should have stopped me and just said, idiot, go home, get that job you want at the gym or GNC, and just buckle it up, go back to school. Didn't say shit. I go up there, he gives me a credit card to move. Do you know what I mean? And that was just one of those where
You needed guidance there.
yeah, and I feel like so.
And you knew you knew it was the wrong answer.
Yeah, but here's where I've really thought about this a lot, and psychedelics just changed this to me. I think that when I hit the world at 18, as far as life experiences, pain, letdown, torment, things that most adults experience, I'd already had my fair share. So I think I hit 18 as like a 50, 60-year-old man. But when it came to relationships, when it came to how I treated people, because my only interactions were adults, I wasn't around kids. I did not see a normal, healthy relationship. I saw a lot of fuck you hang-ups, fuck you, scream, hit walls, slam doors. I saw that shit.
Yeah,
So then when it came time for my relationship, guess what? Boop. And, you know, I had to look at my oldest son and eat that dick and say, yo, Jay, man, I'm the reason your mom actually we got divorced because I didn't know how to act. So I chose to push her away by just cheating relentlessly on her till she gave in. And that was something I had regrets over. Second marriage was like, all right, fuck, here it is. I fell apart. And I waited a long time after that. And that's why I had to like go to counseling. And that's why I always tell people, like, I tripped a lot in counseling. It's like starting to work out. You're going to trip a lot when you first start, but it's the repetition of doing it that really paid out. I had to get mature. And I had to get mature with myself, and I had to get around people. Like, I credit you with being like, why are you doing that in business? That's dumb. Do this. And there were other things. I just had to get better around people. And I think a lot of people, that was the consequence of me being so close to my mom, that all it was my mom.
Did she ever use you as a counseling piece? Like,
oh, dude, I knew so many intricate things.
I grew up that way too, and we can talk
I
about
did.
my side later.
Yeah.
But like, how do you think that influenced you? Like, basically being put into a midst of marital issues and being your mother's counselor.
So, I remember my mom just crying, and I remember wanting to help her. And I would just be like, what's wrong? And then I would hear it. And it couldn't help me but shade my thoughts against my father. For no other reason than I just only heard one side to the story. But surely after what fell apart of my dad and my mom, I'm like, surely she pissed off James Arthur Black pretty bad too. So I really don't have like maybe it was one of this. Most kids are raised by good character principles. And I think I was raised more of, you don't have to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Because there was stuff like when my dad would come in and tell my mom would be like, hey, go to the mailbox and go make sure you get the stuff out of the mailbox before he goes and gets the mailbox. Hey, Jeff, we're going to go here, but you don't need to tell your dad that we went there. There was things like that. Now, it was kind of innocent shit, but it's still stuff like that. You take in your marriage now, my marriage, I'm like this. I'm like, nope, here's my fucking exact location. It's pin drop. I don't give a shit.
But it took you years to figure that out.
Years to get with that. And it was one of those things where I don't fault them because I think they were doing the best they could. I think that's all they knew how to communicate. And I think in this day and age of social media, we're looking for Disney movies that aren't ever going to be there. It's still going to be a raw motherfucking conversation at the end of the day. And I tend to do better with people who are direct. Yeah. And because of my household, and you might be this way, it was so passive aggressive, I can only live in the direct world now because of it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I do have some of that. So when you look back on everything, let me see if I can frame this right. You experienced a lot of like physical fucking pain. Yeah. At least reading it, I would think so.
Yeah.
At one point, you talk about like self-harm.
Yeah.
You talk about trying to take your own life. I guess when I'm trying to connect the dots here is that to do that ultimate act, you have to have a lot of like inside emotional pain. So what was worse? Like the physical pain that you felt when your legs being turned in that tourniquet, or the pain when you're like, man, I just can't deal with this anymore. And like, how do you reconcile the two? Like, I guess some people would say, well, man, he went through all this physical pain. He should be tough as nails. But then the emotional pain must have been very deep. Like, how have you reconciled that is what I'm trying to ask.
So I actually kind of just put all this together recently because I knew after the book that people would ask me questions. And I felt like after it, I'd have these reflections, which I have. I actually could argue because I wasn't out the first few weeks of my life, I don't really feel emotional pain. Okay. So like emotions don't really register to me. I have a very hard time with people in them and tend to kind of be like, ugh. I think...
and you weren't held because you were so fragile. You were breaking bones or they didn't know what...
Yeah. I wanted to die because I hated the conversation that took place in my head. So when they broke my leg... I will never forget. And I talked about this on the podcast that Logan was on. At that moment, I was on a bench. If you could picture me on a bench all by myself, my friend Suicide sat down with me that day. And I will never forget the feeling that came over me when
like it was
happened.
Such bad pain that you could see yourself wanting to be dead.
Yes, because I started fathoming at such a young age, like, well, fuck, man, my life's going to look like this. Yeah. I do not want to live. Like, and then what happened was I'd be sitting in constant pain. And then I was burning my life to trash because it was just the right thing to do, I guess. And so all that was going on in my head was, you're a piece of shit. You're this and that. So I tell every man, I'm like, look, if you want to know the fastest way to fix your mental health is having fucking better conversations with yourself every day. It's actually forcing yourself to sit there and be like, no, yes, you fucked up yesterday, but yesterday ended last night, like John Maxwell says, get off your ass. You got to stand back up, go the next day. That's not embedded in as much. And I think that sometimes we're fighting that as men. And that's where this whole emotional shit coming out there in the world. And I think that's great. But sometimes it's okay to just be like, you know, it fucking happened. I got to move on. Because you only got so many years here, bro. And men die before everybody else.
Yeah, 100%.
So for me, it was just kind of like when I wanted to die, it was the whole concept of I just couldn't imagine my head keep talking to me anymore. I don't think it was like emotional pain. Like I didn't feel like, oh my God, I don't belong. I didn't have the feeling like I didn't belong. I had the feeling like I just wanted it to shut the fuck up. Like, it was very much a different feeling for me when I really look back on it now.
Do you think that's anxiety or what was that?
I think that was just because I had been awake for so much of my life in my youth. With that surgeries, I started only being able to recede into the confines of the safety of my mind. Okay. And as I got older, my mind no longer got safe because I was doing damage to other people that was low-key impacting me. Because even though I wasn't close to people, it still is rotten when you see how you treat people and their reactions.
That makes
and
sense.
that started piling on me. And then it started navigating the narrative of, well, you crumbled your mom's relationships. Well, you crumbled this relationship. That girl hates you. You fuck, you know, that. Why not just keep piling on? So it didn't really lead me down a path that I was desired to go out of. You know, I mean, I bounced bars, stuff like that. I was around people you definitely shouldn't be around.
Yep.
And it was no other desire than I just didn't give a fuck.
Well, was that the turning point?
It was, you know, it wasn't long after. So after I tried to kill myself, I woke up, I drove around the whole state. I was pissed. I got up the next morning like nothing was wrong. So it was 32. And so it was that first year I didn't do anything but work at home. And then a psychologist or counselor pointed out to me that was a great form of depression I was building for myself. And I was like, oh, all right. So I started going out. But over the time of that year, I was having really good conversations with myself of like, you know, I haven't lived any other way but what everybody else told me I should kind of live. Maybe I should do it my own way. Like, maybe I should just kind of go all in on myself, just kind of wipe the slate clean, kind of just see where it goes, and just try to do better. And I honestly think at that time, if I didn't find out about Keegan, my youngest son, he changed my life, made me a better man. He forced me to step up. And when I went and got custody of him and became a full-time dad, that was when I decided to really not look back. And it's how, you know this, and we'll talk about this in After Dark. But when you're a fucking part-time dad, you see your kid a few weeks a year, you don't really view yourself as a dad. So this really forces you to step up because you got to be the cool guy. Kids in town. All right, bro, we're busy you just make it great. It's like a party. And then they leave and you're like, all right, cool. You go back to your life. Full-time kid, he changes it, especially, all the time, da-da-da-da. And he forced me to grow up. I told him all the time, I was like, Keegan, I legitimately have 100% can thank you for making me a better man. Because he forced me to step up. He forced me to look at, some people say they get like plants or things so they can like nurture them so they don't die or something. He gave me a reason that even if life was trudgingly painful to me, I still had to show up for someone else other than myself.
Do you, looking back on your childhood and a lot of things we talked about, do you have, a lot of people have this thing in their head that they got to do it better than their parents. Do you have any of that in you or not at all?
So for a while, I chased to be better than Jim Black. Except one day my older sister told me, you're just like Jim. I was a womanizer. I hated myself. And that was when I remember I literally looked at myself in the mirror one day. I was like, I fucking hate you. And I know someone else we know, Joe, said that too. Literally, I think I've met a lot of men who will eventually look at themselves to say that. And my dad was a man of financial means. He did great. Like he really excelled in life. And I wanted to beat him there. And then one day it dawned on me. It was like, man, I was chasing the wrong shit. I'm chasing beating my dad's legacy that isn't going to mean a shit to anybody. And like the time passes. But what's going to mean something is be the first male ever in my family to actually step up and like be like, I'm here. I'm not going to be a complete dysfunctional piece of shit. I'm going to try to save it.
Yeah.
And so I look at my family now as my second opportunity and to go from there. But to answer your question, I chased it only to become him. Mm-hmm. And I would tell other men, be careful who you chase. Because I think that chasing your dad might be a bad thing sometimes. David Deotta, who wrote The Way of the Superior Man, actually wrote a whole book about this.
Really?
Yeah, he talks about the whole drive for that. And for me, it was just nothing more. I wanted to just be remembered as a better man than my dad was at the end of the day. That's all I wanted.
Yeah, not necessarily related to the parent in general, because it was probably taking you down a wrong direction, but just better overall.
Yeah, 100%.
How much time we have?
I was about to say we got 5 minutes.
Okay.
Hit with the last question, bro.
So here's my final question. You've had time to reflect on the book. Mm-hmm. You and I have had 2 or 3 deep conversations about it.
This being the best, most professional we've done.
Is there anything that you left out that you wish you would have put in?
Great question.
And then finally, are you proud of it?
Even better.
Oh, man. So the only thing I think I might have added is I think I would have added a little bit about how my father ended up treating my mother. Mm-hmm. like how he humiliated her in her final years. I think I would have brought a little bit of that in there. Just so people have understood the weird dynamic my mom, because you know that.
I do, and
like
it
my
wasn't
shit's a
all in
Lifetime
there.
movie, ladies and gentlemen.
And there is a lot actually there
Yeah,
to be,
there
and
is.
you okay, and that makes sense.
Yep.
And what made you not put it in?
Out of respect to my mom, because I wanted, here's the thing, I wanted the book to be a story about my journey through some of the hardest shit that a person can encounter, and I didn't fucking turn out okay. It took a lot of work
Yeah,
for me to go
right,
become okay.
right.
And that's why I wanted to show people. Donna wasn't a part of that. My mom wasn't a part of that. She deserved her own place at the table, which was what she did for me in that book, set me up to become the successful man that I am today. And I firmly believe that. I would have really illustrated more what she put up with Jim, and it probably would have led down a rant of me against my father and an example of how not to be. But that's his shit, and he had to deal with it, and he didn't deal with it, and that's on him. But I would have talked about that, how he broke her and discarded her and treated her like trash.
Would you put that in like just as an example of what, not like you said?
No, I would have just wrote it in the story as it started unfolding. I would have weaved it in because it was going on the whole time.
Right.
And then you asked if I'm proud of the book. I am 100% at peace because of the book. I don't think I'm ever going to admit I'm proud of it, because I can't even admit I'm proud that I beat my bone disease by bodybuilding. I look at it like, what the fuck else was I supposed to do? I wasn't going to be in a wheelchair. If you know me, I'm not, that wasn't going to be me. So even all my friends, when they knew me as a kid, were like, yeah, we kind of figured you were not going to accept that. So it wasn't really a shocker. I think I'm more proud of it in the fact that the peace it gave me. Because I had to really like work on myself. Like, it's a PhD in me. And I tell everybody it was the best degree I ever got. And if you're ever in a spot where you just don't know where to go in life, your thoughts will confuse you. Once you start writing them, you will figure out what really means shit to you and what does not. And once you see it, you can learn to let go of things better. And that book cleaned a lot of that up for me.
I'm glad to hear it.
The word that I used earlier to you when we were setting up, I said you seemed like so much more at peace the last time I saw you.
Yeah,
It's been like 3 or 4 years since I saw him, and I saw him last. And so I was like, who is this?
I got no more sword to fight. Like, I mean, I literally took this bone disease. I've taken like no one in my lifetime might ever show up to take. I hope someone does. I really would shake someone's hand if they could crush it and do something even as obscene with mine. But once I did this last prep at Masters Nationals, where I came back from my broken fucking back, where I was told I needed both my hips, both my rods, and a fusion at 4, 5, and S1. Once I came back, still crossed stage, one of my top 3 conditions. What else is there left for me to prove? And I was okay with like letting it all go. It was like I needed to go through all that. And the reason is, Logan, how much time do I got? Okay, tell you this. So that bone stretcher machine, I tapped out early. It bothered me for an adult, and I never discovered that until after I wrote the book. That prep was more as equally as painful as that bone stretcher surgery. I beat it, and now I knew I could walk away. I was able to beat it and double the time in pain, and that to me was a weird, fucked up challenge I took, but it's what I needed to do to be able to say goodbye on my terms, and that meant everything to me.
That's deep. That's deep. That's probably the first time I really heard you admit that bodybuilding might be past you.
Yeah, I think so. I'm an all or nothing guy. I didn't get here by anything else. Like, bodybuilding could have broken me in half, and you knew that anytime. I gave it my all, and because of that, I have to completely go away. Yeah, and I'm real cool with it being there. You know, like I said, I told you I might jump out at 50 and maybe do something, but at the end of the day, man, with my bone disease, I waged war 28 years in something you've coached for a long time. You know, people go out all the time due to injuries, can't keep up with the diets, can't keep up with the drugs, can't keep up with the sleep. And for 28 years, cardio.
I mean, it's,
dude, you know I get up every day at 3:30 to do my cardio. You think it's crazy, but this is what I do, folks. And I literally lived this one discipline for 28 years, and it isn't stopped. The only thing that's going on is I'm taking the competitive fire and just putting it into doing this for men and having great conversations. It's just another avenue. And I think that stuff I would tell men, hard shit builds you. Like, I don't regret a fucking thing I did. I don't regret a relationship I burned to the ground. I don't regret a family member I don't talk to. I don't regret a friend I don't talk to. Sure, is it my life full of sad stories? Yes, we all are.
Yep,
but it got me to where I am, and I look back on it and was like, hell of a ride it's been.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that in the world, we've talked about this. Everybody's trying to arrive at death safely. There's no fucking rewards for getting there safely. Live free.
Might as well slide right in, shoot up, spit out.
And that was the thing, man. Like that whole shit I went through in my book is nothing more than a dissertation of the journey of a life. Is that you're in life you're born to fear, and in life you have to become fearless. Mm-hmm. And that was literally what my whole book was about. It was a very hard lesson in being a scared little boy and having to become a very hardened man.
Yeah.
And I think that that's stuff that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back and, you know, I was kind of sad about the kid I left on the hill that day, but I look at how many people I've inspired with my bone disease and broke that ceiling and just shattered the shit out of it. It's okay. I can accept that. Yeah. I'm cool with it. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat me. I think this is the best way we've done it so far. Yeah. Way more intimate. I know you already gave all your info, where to drop them, but guys, Jay's been a great friend of mine for a long time. Support his brands. I always tell everybody who comes on my podcast, just give these people who come on a fair chance at your business. Support them. Jay, you got good stuff out there with New Ethics. You got great stuff out there with Advanced Vitality. Last question I'm going to ask you. Yeah. When am I going to help prep you to get back on stage to go get that Masters Olympia title? Most of y'all don't know he's a fucking pro. He's got beautiful lines. He's got those beautiful bellies that you just would jerk off to and just would absolutely love to see half naked in your bedroom. My dad asked me if I was gay when he came my senior year. He's like, Jeff, are you a homo? Your room's full of men dudes covering your walls. And I'm like, no, Dad, it's just fucking cool seeing Ronnie Coleman with 585.
That's funny. I had to let go of the dream for a bit because I was working on business.
Sure.
And in 2021, when I prepped, I wasn't my best self for my business. I can relate. And so I had to just put it out of my head, or else I was going to be very disappointed every single year. So what I done was that I kept working on my weaknesses, still living the life of a bodybuilder. But you know what? You're not as strict on the diet. You don't have, like, if you miss a training session, you got to live with it. And when you're just chasing the Olympia, if you miss a session, you're stressed and you're pissed off. And I couldn't keep living that way. And so the answer is maybe 2024 has to go the way I want it to go. And I am pivoting in some of my business and trying to free up some time and less stress. And we can talk about that in the next episode. So if I can get everything where it needs to be and everything's running like a well-oiled machine and it's not all relying on me and I'm not letting people down, and I feel like I can put all the effort into the prep and still do the things that I do need to do, then we can work on it.
Fair. Logan, you got anything to wrap out before we close up the segment?
I think that was perfect. I'm very happy with how that went. And yeah, like you said, that was great marketing right there too. I love this guy. If you want to watch Jason's, come back for it.
Absolutely. Well, guys, y'all can find the book, BrittleToUnbreakable.com. I've accepted pre-orders. Looking like sometime March. So support your boy. Yeah. And read a good raw therapy lesson and just understand that it's raw. Good luck. Yeah. I don't want to hear the complaints if you say it's dark. But thanks for tuning in, and share, support. Like Jason knows he's a stud. He needs all the self-esteem help he can get. All right, take care, guys. Thanks for tuning in.